y'all brothers could get up, y'all could stretch. You know what I'm saying? Go get some water. All right? Read that.
This is The Miseducation of the Negro on page 19 from 1933
Go ahead.
by Carter G. Woodson. Most missionary teachers of the freedmen, like most men of our time, have never read the interesting books of travel in Africa and had never heard of the Tariq Al-Sudan.
They never heard of the Tariq Al-Sudan. This is what he's saying in The Miseducation of the Negro. Next slide. That's the Tariq Al-Sudan. The Tariq Al-Sudan is talking about Jews in Africa, in West Africa. With the, you see that Jews of Bilad al-Sudan? This is what this is talking about. So why would somebody of the Miseducation of the Negro saying, they never told y'all to read this? That's how I found out about this source. I'm reading the Miseducation of the Negro and I said, what is that? And boom, it leads you to Jews in West Africa. Okay? That have an oral tradition of them fleeing Yemen and going into Africa and finally landing on the west coast of Africa. Go to the next slide. Now, this is the Tariq Al-Fattash. This is in Timbuktu, the largest library in the world at that time. Okay? Read that out.
In the manuscript C of the Tariq Al-Fattash Chronicles, a community called the B'nai Israel existed.
The sons of Israel. Go ahead.
Existed in Timbuktu, Mali, in 1402 CE. They were said to own 333 wells, had 7 leaders, and had an army of 1,500 men. Timbuktu is in the modern Timbuktu region of Mali.
You see that? This is documents written in Arabic of Jews in Africa. Next source.
In the land of Lemlem, the source is the Annuals of Oriental Literature, Volume 1 of 1892 on page 140 through 141.
Okay.
The first point is boundaries. The land of Lemlem is to the south of Berisi. It is bounded on the west of Mekzara, to the east of Wankarak, to the north of Ghana, to the south of uninhabited regions. It is not known whether there is any inhabited country of the south of Lemlem. To the westward of the town of Melil, along the stream which rises from the spring that supplies inhabitants with water from its source till it falls into the Nile, are many tribes of Negroes. Point 2, inhabitants. According to the accounts of the people of the neighboring countries, the natives of Lemlem are Jews.
Are what?
Are Jews.
They're Jews. Go ahead.
The greater part of them are plunged in ignorance and unbelief.
They're ignorance and unbelief. Because what are they doing? They're not keeping the laws. Go ahead.
The Negroes who live on the banks of the river, which rises from the mountains of the south of Melil, go naked, carry on no trade, have no regard for marriage, nor any sense of what is right. They are the most prolific of men. They are possessed of camels and goats. Their food consists of the milk of the goats and camels, the fish that they catch, and dried camel's flesh.
Now you could go to the next source on that.
The next source is Jews in Places You Never Thought Of by Karen Permack on page 9 through 10. In addition, Jewish, Arab, and Christian accounts cite the existence of Jewish rulers of certain tribal groups and clans identifying themselves as Jewish, scattered throughout Mauritania, Senegal, the Western Sudan, Nigeria, and Ghana.
See that? Jews scattered through all of these regions of West Africa. Yeah.
Among notable Arab historians referring to their existence at Ibn Khaldun, who lived in the 13th century,
Mm-hmm.
a respected authority on Berber history.
Yeah.
The famous geographer Al-Idrisi, born in Satura or Salakia, Quetta, Spain, in the 12th century, who wrote about Jewish Negroes in the Western Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
And the 16th century historian and traveler Leon Africanus, a Muslim from Spain who was raised by a Jewish woman working in his family's household, who is said to have taught him Hebrew and emigrated with the family to Morocco in 1492.
Mm-hmm.
Leon Africanus later converted to Catholicism, but remained interested in Jewish communities he encountered throughout his travels in West Africa.
In West Africa. So you see Jews in West Africa. Continue.
The second source is from Leo Africanus, The Description of Africa, Volume 1, on page 32.
Mm-hmm.
Howbeit they say that upon Nilus, which was the Nile River, do inhabit two great and populous nations, one of Jews towards the west.
The Jews towards the west. Go ahead.
Under the government of a mighty king.
Next slide. Now you see on the right-hand side, this is a Hebrew inscription from Morocco, dated 3rd century BCE. CE, which is AD, Common Era. All right? A Hebrew inscription. Why is that in the west coast of Africa if we ain't there? Okay.
The source is from A System of Universal Geography, or a description of all parts of the world on a new plan, according to the great natural divisions of the globe by Conrad Maltbrun. It says the kingdom of Loango contains black Jews scattered throughout the country. They are despised by the Negroes who do not even deign to eat with them. They are occupied in trade.
So they're despised by the Negroes, by other blacks. You understand that? Okay.
They have a separate burying ground. So let me go back up a little bit. They are occupied in trade and keep the Sabbath so strictly that they do not even converse on that day. They have a separate burying ground very far from any habitation. The tombs are constructed with masonry and ornamented with Hebrew inscriptions.
And they're ornamented with Hebrew inscriptions. Next slide.
The source is from Al-Haggard Al-Salam Shabini, collected and formatted by James Gray Jackson, an account of Timbuktu and Hosa in 1820. This place is reported to be inhabited by one of the lost tribes of Israel, possibly an immigration from the tribe of Judah. Yehuda in African Arabic signifies Judah. Yehudi signifies Jew. It is not impossible that many of the lost tribes of Israel may be found dispersed in the interior regions of Africa.
Damn.
When we shall become better acquainted with that continent, it is certain that some of the nations that possessed the country eastward of Palestine, when the Israelites were a favored nation, have immigrated to Africa. The next source is Jewish Roots in Africa by George E. Lichblow. Pause. Some evidence.
Lord in Christ, go ahead.
Some evidence can also be derived from surviving tribal traditions of some African ethnic groups, including links to biblical ancestors, names of localities. Jesus Christ. Localities.
It's all right. You've been reading for a minute. If you want to switch readers, man, just let me know, man. Go ahead.
I'll let you know. Just not take a bathroom break. That's it.
Come on.
And ceremonies with affinities to Jewish ritual practices. Moreover, the writings of several modern West African historians and two personal anecdotes indicate that the memories of an influential Jewish historical past in West Africa continue to survive.
You see that? I'm just banging you in the head with sources. Source after source after source after source after source. That's all I'm going to keep doing all day. To emphatically prove who we are. All right? Next slide. We gonna be here for a little while, y'all. Y'all can get up, y'all can stretch, go get a drink of water. Hopefully there's some of y'all young in the back. Y'all could loosen up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Hey man, I'm not done, Ak. I'm not done, Ak. We on the next one? Nah, next slide. Look at that. You see that picture? That's the Magandawa Da. All right? The shield of David on the west coast of Africa on a cup. You understand? Go ahead, Ak.
The source is from Lud Luger of a Nigeria magazine.
Mm-hmm.
The design of the interlaced triangles is, think commonly so-called Solomon's seal.
Mm-hmm.
I do not know it and when it was adopted as a seal of Islam, but it was found on the lid of a very handsome goblet or jug of brass and copper covered with designs, which was captured by the troops when the emir of Kontagora, the principal slave raider in northern Nigeria, was defeated.
See that? Next slide.
The source is called the Encyclopedia of Jewish Diaspora, The Origins, Experiences, and Culture, Volume 1, by Mark Avram Ehrlich.
This is a very good book. You might walk past it because it's two Amalekites looking crazy in the front of the book. Very good book. Go ahead.
This is page 454 of the book. In the later centuries, Jews are believed to have settled in Western Africa during the height of Songhai, Mali, and Ghana, and the Kenan Bonu empires. According to accounts from the explorers of the region, several powerful Jewish families of the Songhai Empire were of Jewish origin until Askia Muhammad came to power in 1492, decreed that all Jews either convert to Islam or leave the region. According to certain records in Timbuktu, an older community was formed by a group of Egyptian Jews who traveled by the way of the Sahel corridor through Chad and Somalia. Another community was that of the Jua, ruler of the Kokia, located near the Niger River, whose name is only known as Zua Alayman or Zua min al-Yaman, meaning he comes from Yemen. Local legends state that Zua Alayman was a member of one of the Jewish colonies transported from Yemen by the Abyssinians in the 6th century CE. Zua Alayman is said to have traveled into West Africa along with his brother and eventually established a local Jewish community between Mali and northern Nigeria.
Let's go to the next source and let's keep banging Amalek in the head, man. Let's keep banging Amalek in the head with these damn sources. All right, all praises. All praises. Let's go. Let's go. All right, you see on the right-hand side, that's the same place, right? That's something that holds oil, right? A menorah-shaped bronze lamp from, once again, Morocco, from the 4th to 5th century, right? Archaeological museum in Rabat. Once again, proving what? Jews in the west coast of Africa. This is the 4th, 5th century AD. All right? Read the source.
This is from The Earth and Its Inhabitants, The Universal Geography by Elise Recluse, Volume 12 of West Africa. The Mandingans, who are now broken up into many rival petty states, are excellent husbandmen, but display their remarkable talents chiefly as traders. They have been compared to the Syracuse, the Jews of West Africa.
Next source. Hold on. Technical difficulties. They playing. How am I getting muted on Clubhouse? Yo, I'm telling you, man. My bad. I'm back. Amalek muting me on Clubhouse. Amalek playing games with the Wi-Fi, but he can't stop me. Let's keep going. Next source. Read.
This is from The Travels of Ludovico of the Bothema, and Egypt, Syria, Arabia Desert, and Arabia Felix, and Persia, India, and Ethiopia, AD 1503 to 1508. At the end of 8 days, we found a mountain which appeared to be 10 or 12 miles in circumference, in which mountain there dwell 4,000 or 5,000 Jews who go naked.
Now, medieval times, it's not literally butt naked. Okay, it means they're not having shirts, right? Just context. Niggas ain't running around with their rods out. Keep reading.
And are in height 5 of 6 spans, and have a feminine voice.
Disrespectful. We don't got no feminine voices. Keep reading now.
And are more black than any other color.
They are what?
More black than any other color.
Okay, continue.
They live entirely upon the flesh of sheep and eat nothing else. They are circumcised and confess that they are Jews.
Next source. I'm like mad right now. Strictly lamb diet. Different. They had lamb burgers. Continue. Lamb lasagna. This is how I know we need redemption and we in captivity, man. Lamb lasagna. Yeah, the next source out.
Sources from the Efik people by Elder Chief Efyon Ukpon Eeyou Nsab.
So, how did you do that so perfect?
What?
All right. So this is a damn chief of the tribe. This is him himself. Go ahead, read that.
This orient and pointed quite specifically and intelligently to Nubia, one of the ancient outgrowths of Egypt, peopled by the Falashas. The Falashas have been identified by world historians as black Jews who, feeling disenchanted by the inhuman treatment of the Israelites by the Egyptians of the time, moved out to establish on their own. From Nubia, movement reached ancient Ethiopia, which at some point in time became a world power. The birth, death, and resurrection of Christ ushered in a new worldview in a religion called Christianity, and the Ethiopians and Egyptians both went that way. At a point in time, another religion, Islam, was born out of Arabia, a religion which sought to take things by force. It swept through Egypt and conquered it with lots of deaths.
Now, this is honestly why I brought this source out, because ain't no damn Ethiopians Jews, Slaki. But I brought this source out mainly to show Islam beginning to conquer with force. Go ahead.
When the Ethiopians, the Falashas, heard of the intention of the Muslims to invade Ethiopia, majority of their ancestors pulled out and thus begun the famous migration story of the Efik people. These migrations took them through Sudan to Lake Chad, where the group became fragmented and went into different regions. The people now called Oran and Urain went into the Cameroon. Some went into Ghana, while others went into Congo and Equatorial Guinea.
So there's a history of the Jews of West Africa through their migration through East Africa. That's why I showed you this. Okay? But it ain't no damn Ethiopians, man. They trying to connect the two. That's not, no. Next source.
The Stella Montrana is a Hebrew language tombstone found in Morocco.
Now another Hebrew tombstone in Morocco. That's the third archaeological piece in Morocco with Hebrew inscriptions that I showed. I'm just saying. Yeah, read the source out.
The source is from The Jews, Race, and Environment by Maurice Fishberg on page 149. Bastian speaks of Negro Jews living on the Loango coast in West Africa. Movambu, or Judeos, they are, on the whole, a fair-looking race, says Bastian. They are more serious and restrained than the rest of the Negroes. Although in other places they are despised, Here, they take a dominating position, or at least such as to be respected and partly even feared, because they are rich and have most of the commerce in their hands. The same author claims that though they are of Negro race, still he detected Semitic Ambifopino on the east coast of that island. He met natives who called themselves Zafi Ibrahim, or descendants of Abraham, and who claimed to be altogether Jews. But I could not detect any difference in color, features, or dialect between them and the other people of the eastern coast, comments the author.
You see that? Let's continue. Next source.
This source is a system of universal geography, or a description of all parts of the world by Conrad Mount Brun, Jean-Jacques, definitely Haitian, Nicholas Huet on page 101. A fact worthy the attention of travelers is that, according to Aldendorf, the kingdom of Loango contains black Jews scattered throughout the country.
Black Jews scattered throughout the country. Go ahead.
They are despised by the Negroes who do not even deign to eat with them.
So these are the Hamites. Now we have sources here that show Jews in West Africa being separate from the Hamites. So when they tell you black sold blacks, no, Hamites sold Israel. And we could prove this with the scriptures. We could go to Joel 3 easily. We could go to Amos 1 easily, quick. Boop, boop. But it's always good to make the scriptures come alive. Okay?
They are occupied in trade and keep the Sabbath so strictly that they do not even converse on that day.
Mm-hmm.
They have a separate burying ground, very far from any habitation.
Mm-hmm.
The tombs are constructed with masonry and ornamented with Hebrew inscriptions.
With Hebrew inscriptions. You could stop there. You could go to the next verse. Next slide. I'm used to Bible verses, man. Read that, brother.
This is the source from Henry Kissinger.
Henry Kissinger, a devil. Go ahead.
Tuesday, January 28, 1969, from the Memorandum for the President.
Go ahead.
Biafra, which is 3,000 square miles and the populace 46 million. Colonel Ojukwu, 35, British trained, erstwhile playboy, presides over the popular support and military morale of a people convinced that defeat means extinction. The Igbos are the wandering Jews of West Africa, gifted, aggressive, westernized, at best envied and resented, but mostly despised by the mass of their neighbors in the Federation.
Despised by the mass of their neighbors. Go ahead.
They have fought well by African standards against heavy odds. Their cynical public relations use of the starvation has been brilliant.
This is Henry Kissinger? All right, no sweat. Keep reading, huh?
The next source is the biblical Hebrew origin of the Japanese people by J. Edelberg.
Now, I will bring this source out in the future when I go into the samurai, when I go into the certain people within the mountains of Japan. Okay? Because remember, we everywhere. Okay? And we were the samurai. Those were Jews. Those were Israelites, to be exact. Okay?
From page 11 and from 12. In 1972, after returning from the Ivory Coast, the author published his first book, Bambara, a story about Hebrew biblical footprints left in ancient African cultures that uncovers as a fascinating step-by-step puzzle. The 40-year mysterious journey through African coasts, deserts, mountains, and seas on the way from Egypt to Israel during his engineering career, while managing large Israeli overseas engineering operations, including Iran and Ivory Coast, the author discovered some interesting linguistic and cultural similarities between the Hebrew language and Bambara, spoken by an African tribe in Mali.
See that? Similarities between Hebrew and the languages of Bambara. Now, of course, over time, through the synchronism of cultures and the amalgamation of marriages and tribes, the Hebrew dialect will change. But there's still remnants and leftovers that proves that these are the children of Israel. These are Jews. Next slide. Now, this is a depiction. You see the source up top, Bambara people in Upper Senegal, right? Illustration from colonial phrase, right? That's a depiction of these people. They wearing, see what they wearing? That's Hebrew culture. Next slide. Now you see on the right side, Hebrew Wisdoms of West Africa, this page 83, a drawing by Sir Henry Morton Stanley in 1884. Now, if you look at this picture, this is a man on the west coast of Africa with a mitre and a breastplate, and a Israelite Levitical breastplate. Okay? Read the source out.
This is from Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph J. Williams on page 66. Thus far, however, we have shown certain cultural elements to the Ashanti in the ancient Hebrews, such as their religious dances, use of amen, vowel value, patriarchal system, parallel symbolism of authority in stool and chair, endogamy, cross-cousin marriages, familiar names, simplicity of marriage rite and the part wine plays in the ceremony, uncleanness after the child is born, purification ceremony, menstrual seclusion, and ceremonial ablutions. Besides Ashanti, loan words apparent to Hebrew origin.
Ashanti. You see this? The Ashanti, I'm not even gonna, I'll bring that out next time. Next slide.
The source is among the Igbos of Nigeria.
Now, I'll give a teaser here.
Missionary by G.T. Basden.
I'm gonna give a teaser here, right? The Igbos was primarily sent where? Haiti and Louisiana. Read out.
The Igbo country lies within the recognized Negro belt, and the people bear the main characteristics of that stock. There are certain customs which rather point to Levite influence.
To what?
To Levite influence.
To what?
To Levite influence.
These people were sent to Haiti. But the 12 tribe. Anyway, yeah, continue out.
At a more or less remote period. This is suggested in the underlying ideas concerning sacrifice and in the practice of circumcision.
Mm-hmm.
The language also bears several interesting parallels with Hebrew idioms.
Next slide.
This is from The Earth and Its Inhabitants, The Universal Geography by Elise Recluse, Volume 12. East of the Great Popo begins the Dahomey territory.
Now, everybody probably heard of that movie, right? A Woman King, Dahomey. They'd be like, the Dahomey is not a people. The Dahomey is a land. Okay? That's what it is. It's not the Dahomey tribe. There's no Dahomey tribe. That's what the land and the empire was called. Okay? Just got to put that out there. Go ahead, Ak.
Guarded by the important town of Glahuke, known to Europeans by the various names of Fida, Havida, Wida, and Wida. The old writers called it Judah, and its inhabitants were said to be the Jews.
See that? Go ahead.
During the flourishing days of the slave trade, from 16 to 18,000 were annually transported from Ahuda, as the Portuguese called this place, which at the time had a population of 35,000.
Why were these cities called Judah? I'm just saying. Okay, next slide. Oh, Slaki. All right, so you see on the right-hand side, this is what will be the original depiction of what will be the woman king. Now, this is after they were conquered, okay? But these are the descendants of these lands, all right? Read the source.
The source is a mission to Galil, king of Dahomey, by Captain Sir Richard F. Burton, on page 191. The eye dwells with delight upon the numerous country villages, like the 115 towns of the tribe of Judah, and upon the thin forest of palms rising from the tapestry of herbage, here waving, there cut short, which combine to make this spot the Firdaus or paradise of the Dahomey land.
Next source. Now, you see the where this comes from, right? Can you zoom in, Abayak? Because I need you to zoom in for this, to this map. Now you see it's a map, page 257 on Alan Howard Godfrey's Lost Tribes Myth, making the location of the known Negro Jews in the African continent of the Southern Mediterranean. Can you zoom in on? Is that the most you can zoom in? There gotta be a way you can zoom in. If you can't zoom in, it's all good. This slide will be pointless. We'll just go to the next one. Because I need to see the landmarks and the names of the people there. That's what I want to show. It's gonna say in the west coast of Africa, even going into North Africa, you're gonna see Levite cities, the land of Judah, Ephraimites. You're going to see that all scattered through the west coast of Africa. It's all right. Go to the next slide. Huh? Yeah, read that.
The source is from the Jewish Virtual Library. And this is according to Zakor, some of the Jewish survivors from the Tuat, following the routes of the caravans, took refuge with other Jews settled along the Niger, but their safety was only temporary. Soon afterwards, in 1493, under the influence of the same El-Meghili, acts via Muhammad the Great, the ruler of this region, introduced an edict for the eviction of the Jews of the Songhai. They apparently found themselves in the position of choosing either to renounce their faith or die. Hadera, the leader of the Zakor, noted that the Jews could not go further in front of the great Nile of the Arabs, that is, the river Niger. They stopped facing the Quran and the sword. They converted. This was how he concluded that black Jews became Muslims. Today, the members of the Zakor portray themselves as a small, early Jewish population, which is said to have been superseded by the subsequent Islamic community, with only tiny remnants of Judaism surviving. The heads of the families who founded Zakor relate that the three families constituting the community from the 16th century, the Levite Kahats, now named Kati, the Cohens, and the Abanas, were not in fact the first Jewish inhabitants of this region, of these regions.
You see that? More and more sources. We're gonna keep going, man. Yeah.
Kohath is the second-born son of Levi.
Right. Yeah, I'll go into that.
So the source, the next source, the Kohathites, the Jewish Virtual Library, and it says the decline of the Jewish communities of West Africa can be traced to the arrival of Muslim invaders in the 14th and 15th centuries. North and West African Jews banded with other local communities of the Berbers, Christians, and Greeks to ward off the invaders, but eventually succumbed. Many were forced to convert to Islam, sold into slavery, or simply massacred. In the face of this persecution, written traditions such as the Torah were lost. The Igbo B'nai Israel, though having no written evidence of their Jewish heritage, maintained a strong oral tradition and practiced many Jewish customs in secret. Records of this medieval Jewish communities found in the Timbuktu Mali Islamic Library indicate the presence of Jewish families in the region before the arrival of Islam in the 1300s Common Era.
Keep going.
This is the next source. Places of memory and legacies in the age of insecurities and globalization, page 145. In the same mindset, in 2013, Islamists in Mali, affiliated with Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, burned 2 libraries containing thousands of
Burned
the
2
Timbuktu,
libraries. Okay.
containing thousands of the Timbuktu manuscripts, dating back as far as 1202 and written in such languages as Arabic,
Mm-hmm.
Songhai,
Mm-hmm.
Tamashek,
Mm-hmm.
Bambara,
Mm-hmm.
Hebrew,
Okay.
and Turkish.
And Turkish. Next slide. Okay.
This is the Untold Story Revised Edition by Edgar Shaw. The Black Jews went to Portuguese colonial possessions of Western Africa, which was Guinea, São Tomé, Senegal, Angola, and a few islands near the African coast. Throughout the persecutions in Portugal, thousands of Jews left the country.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews were leaving the country in such massive numbers that in 1499 and 1531, the kings published a law forbidding the new Christians, which would be the Black Jews, from leaving Portugal without special permits. Cecil Roth wrote that the Christian Jews emigrating to the Portuguese colony of Angola in West Africa were agents of the Inquisition and were sent to ferret them out in 1626. It is certain that many Black Jews of Portugal, São Tomé, and Angola, who became victims of the Inquisition and Portuguese persecutions, were sold into slave trade.
Were sold into the slave trade. Right. That's what I'm saying. All of the sources I bring up are going to marry each other. They're all going to merge. Okay?
This is The World, a Very Small Place in Africa, page 67. Christian and New Christian, Portuguese and Luso-Africans. These were Portuguese, a member of whom eventually being New Christians or conversios, mostly Sephardic Jews forced to convert into Christianity and then persecuted by old Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Before long, sexualizations between these immigrants and Africans produced a group of Luso-Africans.
A group of Luso-Africans. Keep that in your head. Okay? Men taking Jewish men or Jews, Black Jews of Portugal, we already know this, taking African women and having something known as history as Luso-Africans. Keep this in your mind. Next slide.
The next source is Portuguese Style and Luso-African Identity by Peter Mark. On page 20, oh, that is a year. That's 10.
It's all good. Yeah, bring it out.
So this is description of the Luso-African dwellings in 17th century illustrations of Afro-Brazilian architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Offer graphic evidence of the movement of people, European and Euro-African traders, as well as African slaves between the Guinea coast and Brazil.
Next source.
The next source is Parfit Tudor from 2020, Hybrid Hate. Conflations of anti-Black racism and anti-Semitism from the Renaissance to the Third Reich, New York. Oxford University press pages 64 all the way to 65 to 75. Judaism has been present in sub-Saharan Africa for centuries. Beginning in the 15th century, Jews who were fleeing persecution in Spain and Portugal founded small mixed communities down the west coast of Africa. There was also an identifiable Black Jewish community, which was probably of Spanish origin in the West African kingdom of Luango until the end of the 19th century.
Go ahead.
The last source is The Jews of North Africa by Tariq Taleb Garland on page 31. In 1512, Spain invaded Oran and Bogi and sold a great number of Jews from these cities as slaves.
Next slide.
This is the source of Black Jews, the religious challenge or politics versus religion by Ulysses Santa Maria. In the 12th century, El-Idrisi, the Andalusian geographer, also cited the Hebrew colony of Lam located 200 miles from Timbuktu, and the existence of 2 Jewish towns on the Niger. Then 1 century later, Haji and Agwati added this: there is a race of people in Togur called Medjahariya who are converted Jews. Their women speak Hebrew in order to not to be understood. From this period onwards, there was a very significant Jewish influence throughout North Africa to such an extent that Dominican missionaries had to learn Hebrew and Arabic.
Now we've seen this in the last source, because all the sources once again are marrying each other. Because in the mouth of what? 2 or 3 witnesses. That's why I'm doing this. Go ahead.
But what about the south of this margin of the Saharan contracts? In the reign of John II of Portugal, nearly 700 Jews were taken from their kin and deported to the island of Sao Tome, which is St. Thomas, on the west coast of Africa. This island is also close to Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon. Escaping from St. Thomas, the Jews emigrated to the coast of Angola between 1484 and 1499. They must have settled in several Portuguese colonies and over the centuries mixed with the indigenous black population. Near the Congo and Gabon in 1776, black Jews called Bavambu, or even Movambo, Mayomba, May, or Mavumbu, lived on the coast of Loango by the river named the Rio Muni. It would seem that they adopted Christianity at the same time as maintaining their Judaism. By 1847, David Livingstone discovered a group of educated blacks living in the interior some 200 miles away from the coast of Loango. These blacks were called the Jews of Angola. They were good merchants, learned easily, and had a knowledge of Portuguese law and history. They were often employed as clerks and writers. For Livingstone, there was no doubt but that these people were descendants of those who had been deported from Portugal in the 15th century. Other evidence supports his intuition. In Savage Africa, Winwood reads, right of having met in Guinea blacks claiming to be Portuguese around 1864. Closer to our time, Dr. J. Krempel noted that sometime after the First World War, that a large community of black Jews existed in the interior of Dahomey. These Jews had the 5 books of Moses written on old parchment in Hebrew.
See that? I really could just stop it here, but I don't want to. Oh, a couple brothers is tired. I see it in your faces, but you'll be all right. You'll be all right, because I'm not finished. Still got a good amount to go. Salakia. All right? This is why the white man tried to ruin our spirits. He shut off the damn YouTube. I don't know how I was getting muted on Clubhouse. I don't know how he did that. I'm literally pressing unmute. 2 seconds later, I'm getting muted. Devil, man. All right, next source. That's it, right? Yeah, read that.
This is from the
this right here is a primary. Just want to say that. Go ahead.
This is the Portuguese in West Africa from 1415 all the way to 1670 on pages 76 through 77. In this country and in Mandinga, there are Jews who are called Gaul and they are black like the people of the country. However, they do not have synagogues and do not practice the ceremonies of other Jews.
They don't practice the ceremonies of the other Jews. Who's the other Jews? No. The Sephardi and the Jews of the expulsion of Spain and Portugal. That's who they are. So this shows you what? Because a lot of arguments that you'll hear is, well, the Jews only went to the west coast of Africa after the expulsion of the Jews. There's no evidence of them there before that. Even though I show archaeology of Hebrew inscriptions going to the 3rd and 4th centuries AD of Hebrew inscriptions in Morocco. But besides the archaeology, this right here is showing you what? There was a separate group of people who were Jews, Israelites on the west coast of Africa that had different certain types of way of keeping their customs than the people of Spain and Portugal. That shows you a distinct difference. This is why I'm bringing this out. Because that's an argument they like to make. Keep reading.
They do not live with other blacks, but separate from them in their own villages. These Gauls are usually jesters and singers and play on viols and cabocos. And because they dare not to enter the villages, they take up a position behind the houses of the lords of the village. And at daybreak they sing his praises until he orders them to be given a ration of millet.
They were at the low class of society underneath the Hamites. Go ahead.
And then they go away. And when the Lord leaves his house, these Jews go in front of him singing and calling out their jests. If the Jew did not know these jests, and if they did not greet the Lord in this way, they would not be tolerated by the blacks. For so great is the ill will felt towards them that they are barred by the blacks and do not dare enter one of their houses except that of the Lord. And if they are found in the village, they are beaten with sticks.
See that? Go ahead.
No Gaul, whether a Jew or Jewess, may take water from a spring until everyone else has finished drawing water. And then the last person will give them water. Or if they live in a country where there is a lot of water, they have some spring of their own set apart.
So this is the oppression of Jews by the Hamites in West Africa.
Like a miracle.
You see that? And they wonder why we say we hate Hamites too.